Alright, today in class we started the unit on algebraic expressions. What is an algebraic expression? It is a mathematical phrase that contains ordinary numbers, variables like x or y, and operators like adding, subtracting, multiplying, and dividing. So something like 3x plus 4 is an algebraic expression. If you have 3x plus 4, 3x is called the term. 3 is the coefficient of x would be the variable. All right, so if I had this, let me write it up here for you really quick. 3x plus 4. All right, in this, the 3 is the coefficient, the x is the variable. The 4 is what we call a constant. A constant is a number that does not have a variable behind it. All right, so what is the difference between an expression and an equation? Expressions do not have equal signs, but equations do. All right, so in the first lesson, we're looking at numbers and estimation. We're going to estimate quantities through algebraic operations. That's our goal, and what we're trying to work towards is solving multi-step equations. All right, and to do this, we're going to look at the Bucky the Badger activity. And we're going to see what's going on with Bucky Badger.
Since it turns out we like reporting on cheating in sports, here's today's Is It Cheating news. When the University of Wisconsin football team scores, the team and all its fans are very happy. The mascot for the team, Bucky the Badger, I'm sure is also happy. But that happiness is tempered because every time new points go up on the Wisconsin scoreboard, Bucky Badger, the mascot, has to do push-ups for every point that Wisconsin has put on the board. So Wisconsin scores a touchdown and an extra point, Bucky does 7 push-ups. Then they score a field goal. The Wisconsin score goes from 7 to 10, and Bucky does 10 push-ups. 10 more push-ups, I should say. If Wisconsin then scores another touchdown, an extra point, and their score goes to 17, Bucky then does 17 more push-ups, putting his total push-up tally by that point of the game up to 34. Here's the problem, which has given rise to the mystery. On Saturday, the Wisconsin football team scored 83 points. Wisconsin 83, Indiana 20. Wisconsin scored 83 points.
All right, this activity is found on page 4 of our workbook. And the first part asks us to restate the Bucky the Badger problem in your own words. So when they started out, they told us that the mascot would come out and would do a push-up for every point that is on the Wisconsin scoreboard. So when they made 7, he came out, he did 7 push-ups. Then they scored another field goal. It went up 3 more points to 10. So Bucky came out and he did 10 push-ups. So far, Bucky did the 7 push-ups and then 10 more push-ups. So he's up to a total of 17 already. Now, they told us at the end that they had scored 83 points. So when we restate the problem, we're trying to say, what are we trying to figure out? So we are trying to figure out how many push-ups did Bucky do by the end of the game. All right. Now, they say about how many total push-ups do you think Bucky did during the game? So this is going to be your educated guess about how many push-ups you think Bucky did. So pick a number that you think is reasonable. If you know that we've already got up to 17 push-ups and we've only got 10 points on the scoreboard, and we know it's going all the way up to 83 points, how many push-ups do you think Bucky will do? So you're going to come and you're going to write that number in that blank. Now, I want you to think of a number that you know it's way too high. There's no way Bucky could have done that many push-ups. And that will go in your next blank. So you put a number there. Then it says write down a number that you know is too low. Okay? Now, let's think about this here. It says, what further information would you need to know in order to determine the exact number of total push-ups Bucky did in the course of the game? So if we're thinking about this and we want to know how many push-ups did he do, well, something we may need to know is we may need to know how many touchdowns and field goals were scored during the game. Okay? Another piece of information that we may want to know is what order did the push-ups, or not the push-ups, the touchdowns and field goal occur? So what order did those touchdowns and field goals occur? Because that's going to affect how many push-ups he does. Okay? So first, we're going to watch a little video to see how many field goals and push-ups did Bucky do.
11 touchdowns, 2 field goals.
All right, so let's look at the order in which those points were scored. So Wisconsin is the W symbol here. Okay, so if you look, like we said, Wisconsin first scored 7 points. So we have a 7 points up here on the board. So he did 7 push-ups then. Now, we don't look at when the University of Indiana scores. So anytime we see this UI over here, we don't look at that. All right, but the next you see Wisconsin scored. So the scoreboard has gone up to 10. All right. Then it was 17. Then 24, 31, 38, 45, 52. We skip the next one because that's University of Indiana. 59, 62, 69, 76, and then finally the 83. So now you have the order, and you also have the amount of touchdowns and field goals. So take a moment and calculate how many push-ups was completed by Bucky by the end of the game.
With Bucky having to do push-ups equal to the number of points on the Wisconsin scoreboard every time there was a new score, that turns out to be a total of 573 push-ups in a big plushy suit with a giant fur head on. Here's the mystery. After Wisconsin scored its 76th point, here's what happened. Bucky Badger left the stadium after having done only 414 push-ups. 6 minutes later, Bucky, or someone wearing the same Bucky suit, came back and finished all the push-ups expected of him or her, all 573 of them, by the time the Badgers were done running up the score against poor Indiana. Was it the same Bucky? Whoever came out in the Bucky suit the second time seemed remarkably refreshed and push-up capable, unlike the Bucky Badger that left just a few minutes before. Is one college mascot depictor capable of doing 573 crowd-pleasing push-ups while wearing a big plushy Badger suit and a giant fur head? So far, the University of Wisconsin Athletics Department is not talking, at least to us. For us, Bucky the Badger gate is still unresolved. Next week, the Badgers play Michigan. We're not planning on DNA testing the mascot for that occasion, but we will be watching.
All right, back in our workbook, it says, if we were Bucky, would we rather our team score their field goals at the start or at the end of the game? So let's think about this. If we do our field goals at the beginning of the game, then we're just adding 3 points onto a smaller number. But if we're doing the field goals at the end of the game, then we're just adding 3 points on to the bigger number. So personally, I would rather them score the field goals at the beginning of the game. Okay, and then they ask us, what is some scores that Bucky will never do? Well, how many push-ups would he never do? All right, so you can write different ones, but one that we know of is 1, because there's no way you can have just a score of 1 in football. All right, field goals are worth 3 points. 2-point conversions are worth 2. So there's no way you're ever going to get just a score of 1 on our field goal. Now, the next part on page 5 is asking us to use the fact that 13 times 17 equals 221. All right, so you're going to use basically mental math skills to help you solve these problems. You're going to need to pause the video, and then after you have paused and worked the problems by yourself, you're going to resume the video so you can check your answers. All right, so use your knowledge of decimal placement and your knowledge of what happens when you multiply by things that end in 0 to help you do these problems. All right, let's check your answers. So if I do 13 times 1.7, well, if 13 times 17 is 221, then 13 times 1.7, I'm going to have one decimal place. So that's going to be 22.1. When I look at part B, it's almost the same thing as 13 times 17, but we have 130. So there's an extra 0 in there, so I want to put my 221, but then if I have a 0 on 130, then I'm going to put a 0 in here. So it's actually 2,210. When I do 13 times 1,700, it's a similar thing. We got two zeros. So we'll have our 221, but then we're going to have to add two zeros at the end. So that's 22,100. Next, there are two decimal places, one from 1.3 and one from 1.7. So I'm going to put two decimal places in my answer. So it's going to be 2.21. Now, there's a way you can check this mental math. If you think 1.3 is close to 1 and 1.7 is close to 2, 1 times 2 is close to 2, so 2.21 makes the most sense. Now, this one, we might have to do a little thinking out here to the side. All right, I should know that 221 divided by 13 is going to be 17. So if the problem is asking me to do 2,210 divided by 13, well, it's going to start with a 17, but to make it reasonable, I need to add a 0 to the end of that, and it's going to be 170. All right, so on part F, it's the same thing, except for, once again, we have two zeros this time. All right, so when we're dividing by 17, we know it's going to have a 13 in it, but it's going to have two zeros, so it's going to be 1,300. Now, a lot of people struggle on part G. On part G, it says that we got 221 divided by 1.3. All right, so when I'm dividing, this is almost like dividing by 1. So 221 divided by 1, it's going to be close to 221. Well, I know it's got to have something to do with a 17. So the only thing that would make this make sense is if this was 170. All right, so for your homework tonight, you're going to do Felicia's Drive Task 3. It says, as Felicia is getting on the freeway to drive to her cousin's house, she notices that she's a little low on gas. There is a gas station at the exit she normally takes, and she was wondering if she will have enough gas before she gets off the freeway. She normally sets her cruise control at a speed limit of 70 miles per hour, and the freeway portion of the drive usually takes her an hour and 15 minutes. Her car gets 30 miles per gallon on the freeway, and gas costs $3.50. There are two parts to this question that you're going to do. You're going to describe an estimate, so that means rounding, that Felicia might do in her head while driving, because we got to keep our hands on those steering wheels, to decide how many gallons of gas that she needs to make it to the gas station at the other end. Part B says, assuming that she makes it, how much does Felicia spend per mile on the freeway? So do this, and then we'll go over it tomorrow together.